Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse Daily Dose of AFA.
Where we bring you hope and inspiration for growth and healing so you can start your day off the AFA way. And in case you have forgotten, I have this book sitting next to me all the time because it's so powerful. We need to hear, you need to hear. Mark wrote a book about how to be absolutely fucking amazing, exactly as you are. We've all forgotten. Mark,
about the book. Right? Yeah. So it's just about stripping away all of the bullshit that gets in the way of really, really understanding how amazing you are. You are absolutely amazing exactly as you are. And once you get to that point where you really, really internalize that and you know it, you love yourself so much that you start making choices in your life that support the fact that you love yourself.
There you go.
It really does change everything. Once you get to that point, you start intuitively making choices for yourself that are healthy, that are good, because you love yourself, right? You wouldn't feed stuff to your kid that you knew was not good for them, right?
Right.
We do it to ourselves all the time. We know it's not good, and even though we
do it anyway,
we do it anyway. So yeah. So once you figure out that you're absolutely amazing, everything turns up.
Right. And so then, like, I'm going to elaborate just a little bit because it just makes sense. It lights me up.
Yep.
So the other thing too about that self-love piece of it, when you're loving yourself and doing these things to take care of yourself, it shows other people how you want and need to be loved. So that way they see, I'm giving this to myself. She's giving it to herself.
Right.
Wow, I can give it to myself. And boy, we can all share the love, right? Yeah. It feeds off of it. It's like that skimming of the stone, it's little tiny bits and pieces every day. Loving and appreciate who you are also demonstrates what you're gonna attract in your life as well.
Absolutely.
What do I want to attract in my life? Like, here's the thing.
So what was the biggest thing? Yeah. What was the biggest thing that came out of, learning to love myself was actually being able to be in a true relationship after that. Because once I loved myself, I had no need for anybody else to love me.
Yeah.
Before, it was always about expectations that were unsaid. And like, you had no idea that there were any expectations. And honestly, I didn't have any idea that there were any expectations. Yeah. But in the background was, you have to love me. Whatever I can do to make you love me, I need to make that happen. Because I did not love myself. So I needed to get it from an external source. Guess what? When that pressure is off, you can be in relationship completely and utterly as yourself. Oh,
yes. One other thing too that's interesting too. So you always hear people say, I found my other half.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you don't want to find your other half. Here's the reason. It's a half, right?
Yeah, it's a half. So you don't need a half.
You don't need a half. You need a whole. Two whole people coming together. So think about this.
Yeah.
Two halves, right? What are you going to try to do? You're going to try to fill the soul, the hole in your soul with something else. You're going to look for someone else to give to you what we can essentially give to ourselves.
You absolutely can give it to yourself.
How much powerful is that to have two wholes come together to love and embrace and accept?
The pressure's off. Like, the pressure's off for them to be anything other than themselves, because they don't need to live up to any expectations. They don't need to be anything other than who they are.
Yeah.
And that's magical.
And cannabis, here's the thing. This is the interesting piece of it all. I'm going to tie cannabis right back into it. Cannabis was a huge tool that allowed me to process that information from a different perspective, right? We talk about this too all the time, is that when you have things that are going on in your life that you need to work through, you have to change your mindset, because how can you solve a problem with the same mind that created it, right?
Well, that's always the question, right?
Yeah. So cannabis helps truly 100%.
Sure.
Helps.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into some daily love, babe.
Yeah.
And this one came from, I think this was a book that you recommended to me a long while ago, and I just was reading it, and I loved this particular passage. So,
what book?
It is the Way of the Superior Man.
David Dita.
David Dita.
He is a very, very powerful. He truly understands the concept and
Now, just because it
consciousness.
says the way of the powerful man doesn't mean that it's any less the way of the powerful woman. Okay.
It's not. So what it
Yeah.
is, true, it's about this man that understands the dynamic of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. So
Yeah.
he's been able to incorporate both sides,
Yeah.
who he is, into his daily life, and he shares the information,
Yeah.
how to actually do that. Like, what
so this was a really good one. So
great. I love it.
This was about finding your deeper purpose and about how you go through different phases in life, and you'll be very excited about one thing and you'll be committed and you'll think this is my purpose. And a year or two later, you're like, this is boring the hell out of me. Like, I can't do this for one more second. And so this is about how that happens and why that happens for us. So here we go. All right. It's like if, for instance, you have your deepest purpose is to meditate and realize God, you might find that before you can totally dedicate yourself to this practice, you must work your way through the concentric circles of playing with sexual partners, using drugs, getting married, raising children, developing a career, and finally, having dissolved your fascination and need to do all of that, getting down to the business of full-time meditation. Now, as you dissolve each layer and move toward the center, you will more and more be living from your deeper purposes, and then your deepest heart purpose, whatever that is, in every moment. However, you probably are not living your deepest purpose yet. You probably need to burn off the karma or fulfill the need of the present purpose by which you are fascinated and distracted. Now, this next piece is really, really the piece I love. It's easy to feel disappointed by life. Success is never as fulfilling as you think it is going to be, but there's a reason for this. Successfully completing a lesser purpose doesn't feel very good for very long because it is simply preparation for advancing toward a greater embodiment of your deeper purpose. Each purpose, each mission is meant to be fully lived to the point where it becomes empty, boring, and useless. Then it should be discarded. This is a sign of growth, but you may mistake it for a sign of failure.
There we go. That's really good. That's really good. So here it is our
piece.
Right? It's our deepest purpose could change, right? It could change. And the reason why it changes is because you change. Our experiences change, the lessons change, the emotions change, how we process information changes.
Yeah.
And it's an evolution, right? Here it is. It's an evolution to the next phase of your life.
Right. And it may not be that it necessarily changes. It may be that you go through these things thinking that they are your deepest purpose.
Exactly.
And then you get through them and you're like, oh shit, that wasn't my deepest purpose because now I'm bored to tears. I got to do something different. Yeah. And so getting through those layers, it's like that onion, right? You peel it back and you got a new layer. It's fresh. And I've had this experience my whole life, really. And so I end up,
give me an example. Give me a story. Give me a story really quick.
Yoga. Okay. I found yoga in 1998. I went on a retreat because I was super stressed, and the therapist I was seeing at the time had just come back from Kripalu, and he said, you have to go to this magical place in the Berkshire Mountains. I said, okay, I've never done yoga, never done meditation. I'm open to it. So I go and I do it, a week-long thing, and I come back and I immediately enroll in a yoga teacher training certification course. And then I go dive in and I teach yoga for 2 years. And at the end of that 2 years, ho-hum, I'm bored. I'm moving on.
Really?
Was not my deepest purpose. It was a stepping stone along the way. And I love yoga and I know the power of yoga. It's just that I'm not in the space of being a teacher, a practicing teacher of yoga anymore, because that was not my deepest purpose.
Okay, that totally makes sense. Right? That totally makes sense. So gathering these experiences, experiencing them, see if it's something you resonate, learn from it, and then make a decision. Right. So
and it's like Sherry, you'll get a lot of shit from people in your life about it.
Oh,
they'll say, can't you be happy just where you are? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm happy. And now I'm going over there. I'm gonna be happy over there. But most people don't like change, right?
I'm gonna sprinkle that happiness all over the place, no matter where I go. Hello, nurse. Good
Sprinkle that
morning.
happiness.
Sprinkle that happiness. Absolutely. Oh, cheers. Cheers to Monday.
Cheers to Monday. Happy Monday, everybody.
Happy
Monday, May
Monday.
17th,
Yes.
2021.
Super day, right? It's going to be a super day.
It is a super day.
Motivational Monday.
Yeah, let's step right into that, babe. We talk about the NCSBN guidelines from July 2018, which is an amazing move forward in the space of cannabinoid medicine for sure.
It's just like what we've been talking about, right? So it's the advancement, the purpose is evolving in our medical society. You know, the healthcare systems, total healthcare, we're evolving into a new space with cannabinoids, psychedelics, and energy medicine kind of starting to rise up to the surface again. So the National Council State Boards of Nursing, which is the council that actually puts on the nursing exam for all nurses to be tested in order for them to obtain licensure. They put out guidelines in the Journal of Nursing Regulations. I have it here somewhere, right here. I keep this stuff everywhere. It's a 64-page book, right? Really, it's big, huge book, all about cannabis.
Yeah.
So they identified 6 essential areas of knowledge about cannabis for all nurses, nursing students, and advanced practice nurses. So we've been covering a lot of different ones, but today we're going to hone in on a safety one. The nurse shall be able to identify the safety considerations for patients using cannabis.
Yeah.
And it's a safety thing. It's a complete
It is
thing.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about pediatrics and teens today.
Yeah.
And
the developing brain.
That's always a real conversation of contention. Yes.
Yep.
Because we don't have solid research in these areas because, honestly, we don't want to enroll a bunch of pediatrics in a cannabis study. Ethically, that's not something that really is allowed, although there are a lot of children who are utilizing cannabinoids, especially for epileptic issues, right? Autism and epilepsy and some epileptic syndromes, very, very effective against those things in treating those.
Behavioral disorders, ADHD, a lot of
safety considerations, right?
Safety considerations. What do we look at? Risk benefit ratio.
Yes.
And we actually think and consider about the developing brain, right? So the human brain development and the role of the endocannabinoid system throughout childhood and adolescence has been the focus of so many different studies. They've been trying to study it. So the interesting thing too, you think about the endocannabinoid system, everyone's different, children are different, how it gets support, nourished, upregulated, downregulated is different.
Yep.
But the one thing that they do all agree on, that the adolescent brain is very, very different from the nature of the adult brain and its structure and the way the neurotransmitters function. And we talk about the neurotransmitters. Those are those messenger signaling systems that give messages to different areas of our brain to either do something or not do something.
Right.
Adolescent brain, child's brain, different than adult brain.
Completely. Yes.
But here's good news too. Right? Here's some good news. Researchers have found that endocannabinoids that we make are crucial in influencing how the neurotransmitters develop in the brain. So they promote the proper circuitry, the wiring of the brain, and new brain growth.
Right.
So the endocannabinoid system plays a huge role in that. And when we talk about endocannabinoids, we're talking about those cannabinoids that we make in our body that are similar to the plant.
Right. And so when our bodies are working and functioning at an optimal level, when we're a young child or an adolescent, the ECS, it goes through changes during the adolescent years. So with heightened cannabinoid receptor density and sensitivity over time, right? So again, it's different structures and changes. So, if our endocannabinoid system is operating efficiently in doing what it needs to do, then the brain is going to be wired in that proper method for all of the rest of the neurotransmitters.
Exactly.
So interference with these changes, for example, use of THC, it can overactivate the cannabinoid receptor, receptor, which may interfere with the development of the mature brain, right?
So it's all about the balance, right? So we
Yeah.
make these internal endogenous cannabinoids.
Mm-hmm.
Normal endocannabinoid system functioning is crucial for our developing years, required for emotional cognitive functions to develop the brain correctly. But too much THC, this is where we're getting into it again.
Yep.
Too much THC can 100% overactivate these receptors, which may interfere. So here's some really cool, there was a research study, I looked at a few of them, and it summed up the importance of the endocannabinoid system in the developing brain this way.
Right.
Here's the quote. Endocannabinoid signaling is an important determinant of maturation of the adult brain. It seems quite likely that disruption of normative endocannabinoid signaling, so these are kids that have healthy endocannabinoid systems, during adolescent years may have long-standing consequences on the adult brain function.
Right.
So this isn't about us being anti-cannabis for kids, but it's about really looking at all the data, looking at the brain, how it functions, the difference between children, adolescents, and adults, and what is the most appropriate thing for us
utilizing it as a medicine, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In this case, it's that risk benefit that you talked about earlier. Now, here's the thing, they say that brain development doesn't stop till the age of 25.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually being challenged these days.
Oh, good.
So with this idea of neuroplasticity, the belief before was that at 25, your brain was done, it was set, you weren't going to change, and so you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's where that came from, because they thought as you aged, you would not be able to learn new things as easily. But what they found, it's not true. Neuroplasticity is a concept that your brain's always changing and growing and moving in different ways. And we know this to be true now, so well into your advanced years. So, but adult and teen brains do work differently. Yeah.
Well, and they work differently and they develop differently. So if you think about adults, we're supposed to be thinking with our prefrontal cortex, right?
Oh, yeah.
But teen brains, which is the rational part that responds to situations with good judgment and awareness of consequences, they don't actually process a ton of their information from their prefrontal cortex. What they do is they process information from their amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain, right? It regulates emotion. So you just think about those kids that are impulsive, right? When they're responding or reacting, they're responding from a place of feeling. Feeling. That's amygdala, right? As opposed to cognition.
Absolutely.
Prefrontal cortex.
Consider all of the hormones that are at play in the pre-adolescent phase, right? It's a lot of hormones. There's a lot of shifting emotions. So they're in this sympathetic nervous system state of being like fired up all the time.
Right. Exactly. So it's just really, like, we said, getting, important to think about, yes, the brain continually develops. However, the emotional processing center and how we process information cognitively is different between children and adults.
Right.
So really important for us to pay attention. And it's not just about cannabis. It's not just about pharmaceuticals. It's about everything that we're doing as we take care of ourselves, including children.
Right. So what do we got in scientific studies? Because we love studies, Cher.
Yeah. So this is interesting. It has to do with adolescent animals. So I will, start off by disclosing that. So basically, numerous animal studies have documented that THC, or synthetic cannabinoids made by the pharmaceuticals companies, given to adolescent animals, have induced changes in emotional behavior, reward response, the endocannabinoid levels, and impulsivity.
Yeah.
Right.
Now,
so
when
it can change.
Yeah. So when we talk about humans, Cher,
there we go.
There were some human adolescent studies, age 12 to 18, of adolescents who were heavy users of THC-rich cannabis. And it did show that there was some interference of the normal endocannabinoid system functioning. And that may result in some long-lasting brain changes that could be harmful and may damage areas of the brain, especially in the areas of the emotionality, the limbic system, and talking about mental illnesses, especially anxiety disorders.
Right, exactly. So think about this. I want to get back to the endocannabinoid system so you guys can kind of connect the dots.
Yep.
So here's the thing. We produce components in our body like THC called endocannabinoid system.
Mm-hmm.
Children's systems should be healthy and optimally functioning. So here's the thing. If you flood their body with too much THC, what happens? Your body goes, I'm good. I don't need to make as much of my own internal endogenous cannabinoids because you're giving it to me from outside sources.
Doesn't that make sense though? When we talk like things like steroids, steroids are used a lot for inflammation, right? Inflammatory conditions. And the doc will put you on steroids. And what happens? Your body, your adrenal glands say, the pressure's off. We don't have to make anything here. We're just going to shut down for a while. And then the problem is that's why you taper off of these steroids after using them, because you need your body to kind of wake up again and say, oh, we need to produce these. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So similar.
Yeah. It's very similar. So the interesting thing too, so we talked about the studies from 12 to 18 that were heavy users of cannabis rich. It showed a little bit of interference of the normal endocannabinoid system.
Mm-hmm.
So contrary, right? The first time cannabis users of 18 years and older was not associated with lower IQ or lower neurocognitive performance. And this was taken from Bonnie Goldstein's book, 2 different studies, one in 2012 and one 2014.
Yeah. And then we talk about schizophrenia, because that's something that becomes, that pops up in early 20s, right? Typically someone who's going to develop schizophrenia, it happens in their early 20s. And so we look at a lot of times, how does cannabis use affect somebody who may be predisposed to that? Because there is a genetic component. If it runs in your family, there's a higher likelihood that you could develop it. And so when we look at, THC rich cannabis, those with an increased risk factor, in other words, they have this genetic component in their family, chronic and heavy use of cannabis can increase the risk of developing schizophrenia.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to talk about, so this is some of the things too, we're going to continue to have our conversation throughout the week about mental health. So we will be covering schizophrenia, PTSD, depression. So these are important topics to talk about, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We're going to keep chatting about improving our brains, right? Improving our brains. So to sum it up, let's sum it up. Pediatrics and teen medical cannabis use. Number 1, risk-benefit ratio, right? Risk-benefit ratio. Not just starting with cannabis. What are the other things? So children and adolescents that have these moderate to severe medical conditions that either disrupt the quality of their life or can be life-threatening should have an option to use cannabis under medical supervision.
Absolutely should have the option. Again, it's the risk-benefit
ratio. So here's the other thing too. So you think about, kids and teens that have mild illnesses or occasional anxiety or occasional sleep disturbances. What needs to happen first? So you think about the endocannabinoid system. You need to examine other non-pharmaceuticals and non-cannabis modalities first. It makes sense, right? There's so many other. It doesn't make sense to go straight to cannabis or straight to pharmaceuticals. We got to look at everything.
There are so many things that we can do ahead of time to help stimulate our endocannabinoid system. And we're talking things like talk therapy, exercise, proper diet, sleep hygiene, really big. You could use some supplements, and also share, meditation. Meditation can be a huge help for people, for adolescents.
It's amazing. And it's simple, it's really simple. Motion is the lotion, getting these kids to walk, get into nature, to quiet their minds. There's a lot of different things that you can do, when it comes to these mild.
There are a lot of things to try before we get to cannabis and pharmaceuticals.
So at the Green Nurse, we work with all ages, from pediatrics to geriatrics. And the majority of the kids that we've seen in our practice have had behavioral disorders, seizure disorders, been on the spectrum of autism, have had ADHD. I've seen severe anxiety and panic disorders in kids and teens, severe insomnia, and cancer. So those are the majority of the pediatric patients that we work with that come to us.
And so how do we work with the families? Well, the entire family gets involved in the conversation. And the pediatric intake form is so much more detailed because we really want to be sure that we know what other things they've tried, what other modalities they've given a shot before going to cannabis. Like, steps back to what we just said, Sherry, all of the things that you can try before you get to cannabis and pharmaceuticals. We want to know. We want to know.
Yeah. And so I'm really, it's really a beautiful thing that we can work with families and educate, and I've been a pediatric nurse for a while. I worked in Children's Hospital. And so, so combining like pediatrics, the endocannabinoids, it just makes sense. So, teaching these kids how to nourish their endocannabinoid system using all of these other tools. Really fun. I'm going to share a quick story, which has to do with my kids, which is just funny. So, kids generally don't listen. My kids don't listen to me when it comes to health and wellness. But when they hear it from somewhere else, this is a fun story. So I take all these supplements to take care of myself. I can't get all the micronutrients in. So I have a bottle of supplements on the counter, and they ignore it, and I try to educate them. Well, one day my daughter comes to me and she goes, "Mom, we need to get fish oil." I go, "We need to get fish oil, do we?" And she goes, "Yeah, God, I was just reading all about it." She's going on and on. And then I showed her the counter. I go, "Look, honey, we got it. It was like a big giant 180. Right?
Mama's way ahead of you, baby. We got fish oil in the house.
Exactly. So it's just like, also as adults, us taking care of ourselves as parents, right? Is going to completely 100% model to our children how they need to be taking care of themselves.
Yes. So, oh my gosh, we got so many people to stop by today, Sherry. Ashley, Deanna, Glenn, Jack, Beth, Brian, Sherry, Laura. Oh,
thank you guys for showing up.
And mindfulness for ADHD is awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is. I got it.
Hey, listen, Beth just said May is also Pediatric Brain Tumor Awareness Month.
It just gave me a chills because we take care of quite a few kids with cancer that have brain tumors that have been doing really, really well. Yes, thank you. Pediatrics, mental health. We're gonna crunch through it the rest of the month and continue to have the dialogue. Talk about juicy subjects. Talk about things that a lot of times people don't want to talk about.
But they're hard subjects to talk about.
They're hard. They are hard.
There's a lot of emotion around that. Hey, Kristen. Yeah, there's just so much emotion around it. Now, we didn't talk about safety in regard to, adult use cannabis users who have products at home. Listen, you need to keep those things out of the reach of children, especially edibles. They're not necessarily going to be sparking up a doob, right? But if there are edibles in your house, especially gummies, kids are going to get into them because they just look good. And so there has been a huge spike. And this is why we'll wrap it up. There's been a huge spike of kids, young kids, mostly toddlers, ending up in the emergency room because they have had too much THC. They've eaten these gummies and they don't know any better, right? So
they don't. Well, the thing is,
put your stuff away.
They also make, supplements for kids that are gummies. Think about it. How many people give their kids a gummy supplement or a gummy melatonin? Or I know I used to give my son.
Right. So they're used form factor for them to be eating. And then they see these other ones are like, hey,
this looks a little interesting.
Yeah. And it does affect children differently.
Yeah.
It does. So you need to be aware that it is a safety concern. So we'll end our little safety talk on pediatrics and adolescents with just keep them out of the reach of your kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What do we got going on, Sherry?
Well, tonight we have something going on great. Our mastermind group from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's listed in the event. So if you're a coach, if you're interested in personal and professional development around cannabis, entering into the cannabis space, want to learn how to consult, if you're working with CBD products and you want to learn a little bit more about how you can take it to the next level, right? To help
Mhm.
more people join us in the mastermind.
Yep.
From 7 to 8, we're doing it every other Monday night.
Yes, we are.
And then
Wednesday night.
I'm going to tell you, I saw
Yeah.
Shelly. I think she's in there. Shelly is in there somewhere. She joins us, but her husband is coming on Wednesday night. Captain Jason Straw. He's a
Yep.
United States Air Force retired. He's also a nurse. He was a critical care nurse. He's a nurse. He's a cannabis nurse, and he's part of the Indiana Normal. And Jason and Shelly's story is great. It's a cannabis love story. And then we're going to talk about all the things that he's doing in the space and how he transitioned from Air Force to cannabis nurse to growing and making medicine. So it's going to be a great story.
Hey, hold on. We got a question we got to address. Hey, Brian, I got the same deal, brother. I am on hypertension medication, and I have been for a long, long time. And I've, looked around at different things to try to alleviate that. But I'll be honest with you, I always take my hypertension medication, and I exercise, I meditate, I use cannabinoids, and I still have to take my hypertension medication. I just don't mess around with it. My mom had a stroke. My grandmother had a stroke. Like this is life or death for me. So
and that I'm looking
say that you can take CBD and have it decrease your blood pressure. And there are cases where it will decrease blood pressure, but not enough that that a practitioner can say, yeah, if you take X, you will have this decrease.
But here's the thing that's interesting too. So your blood pressure is really high. I just saw it written. So the interesting thing too, that's important, right? When we're starting with cannabis, is not to look at it as the end all be all.
Right.
It is one tool in the toolbox. Cannabis pairs really, really well with traditional medicine.
Yes.
So we can see it working hand in hand.
Yeah.
So just like with glaucoma, right? Just like with my eyeballs, I'm not going to rely on cannabis to keep me from going blind.
Nope.
Right? I'm not.
But it's a good tool in the box. It does decrease that ocular pressure. Anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Thanks for that, Brian. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Super important. That was a good share.
Good question.
All right. So back on what we got. We got Captain Jason Straw on Wednesday. And then on Friday, of course, at 9 a.m., we have Frequency.
Yeah. Frequency Fridays. And then following next week, a webinar on the Healy. So
boom.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Motivational Monday, everyone.
Yeah, man. Thanks everybody for showing up. I'm having an AFA day because of you, because of me, because I love myself. I am having an AFA day. This is the only Monday, May 17th, 2021 I'm ever going to get. I hope that you make yours an AFA day as well. And Sherry, oh my gosh, what's it all about?
It's truly about my deepest purpose, which is to live my best life and help others do the same. You do that too, everyone. Live your best life and help others do the same. Thanks for joining us.